What's up, everybody? How is everyone doing today? Now that I have awoken you all, today we're going to be going over my top 10 trilogies of all time. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. So with that said, let's get started. So, trilogies are some of my favorite things in the world, but there's so many to pick from. So today I'm going to give my top 10 trilogies. Okay, for starters, I have not seen Indiana Jones. I have not seen the rest of the Matrix trilogy. I have not seen the Dollars trilogy, except for A Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So yes, those are trilogies I have not seen, so they won't be on the list. But coming in at number 10 is going to be the Iron Man trilogy. I absolutely adore this trilogy. Iron Man happens to be in my top 5 MCU. Iron Man 2 happens to be in my top 5 MCU. And Iron Man 3 is my favorite MCU movie. I know I must sound like a crazy person right now, but I just adore this trilogy. Some of my favorite comic book movies right here. Though I don't really like the MCU, these 3 movies I do enjoy. The first one has one of the best MCU villains in my opinion. The second one has a decent villain. I kind of liked him. And then Iron Man 3 has a pretty decent villain with the Mandarin, and I did not care for the Mandarin twist at all. I wasn't angry about it like other people were. So yes, number 10, the Iron Man trilogy. So coming in at number 9, we're going to have the objective best trilogy of all time, and that would be the Diary of a Wimpy Kid trilogy. I adore this trilogy so much. These films are my childhood, with the first one being a cinematic masterpiece, with Greg Heffley's performance being one of the best of all time. It's up there with Marlon Brando in The Godfather for sure. He's just so compelling and such a good written character. Some of the best scripts of all time in this trilogy. Second one happens to be the best one, and my pick for the greatest movie of all time. And then the third one is not as good as the first two, but still an amazing movie. 10 out of 10 trilogy. I recommend all these movies. I read the books as a child, and I am 14, and I still read the books. These are the only books I read because I do not read. I dislike reading. But hey, that's just me. So yeah, books are a masterpiece. Movies are also masterpieces. So, coming in at number 8, we're going to have the Star Wars prequel trilogy, which includes Attack of the Clones, The Phantom Menace, and Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith being my favorite one. I just watched The Phantom Menace last night, and I adored it a lot. It was my second time watching it. I have only seen these movies once, and I actually watched them for the first time last year. And I was not a big fan of the sequel trilogy, or I was not a big fan of Empire. So yeah, I think in terms of quality, this is the worst trilogy in terms of quality, but in terms of enjoyability, I think it's the best trilogy, in my opinion. I enjoy The Phantom Menace more than I enjoy The Empire Strikes Back. I know, I'm a fool. I'm getting ready for those dislikes, but yes, I enjoy Attack of the Clones, or Phantom Menace, more than Empire. Love this trilogy to death. So, coming in at number 7, we have the Toy Story trilogy. This trilogy is definitely my pick for the best and my favorite animated trilogy of all time. These 3 movies consist of 3 movies that were my childhood, especially the second one, which happens to be my favorite in the franchise. All of you talk of this Toy Story 4, but it doesn't exist. I've never heard of it, so there is no Toy Story 4. I love this trilogy to death. The first one is a great animated movie for children. The second one is a very hard-hitting second movie in the trilogy, and the third one is very sad. So yes, great characters. There's a lot of great writing and great directing by, I think, who is Pete Docter. I think he directed these movies. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure. So yes, number 7 is going to be the Toy Story trilogy. So coming in at number 6, we have the OG Star Wars trilogy. I do somewhat like these movies. Empire is my least favorite, then Return of the Jedi, then A New Hope. But, again, I did not grow up with these movies, so I'm now not a die-hard Star Wars fan. I do want to become one, though. But, yes, they're pretty good characters, pretty good writing, not the best consistency, but overall, a pretty decent trilogy, and I never understood why people have this as their favorite trilogy. Maybe it's because of nostalgia. But yeah, so number 6, the Star Wars OG trilogy. Then, cracking our top 5, it's going to be the Dark Knight trilogy. I don't know if I should have placed this as high, but I did. Batman Begins is a pretty enjoyable origin story for the Batman. The Dark Knight is a pretty good but overrated superhero movie. And The Dark Knight Rises has multiple problems, but I do enjoy it somewhat. So this trilogy is not the best superhero trilogy in my opinion. You'll see that coming up next. But it is my pick for the best superhero trilogy. I know people adore these movies to death, but I just have never been a huge fan. I think Christopher Nolan happens to be one of the most overrated directors, with only having 2 masterpieces in my opinion, which include Inception and Memento. But yes, this trilogy is beloved by many fans, but I have not been a big fan. I do need to rewatch them though, so maybe I will turn and become a fan of this trilogy. But not right now. I'm not a fan of this trilogy. I kind of am, but I'm not really. But it is this high because it is pretty enjoyable. So yes, number 5, The Dark Knight trilogy. So then, coming in at number 4 is going to be my favorite superhero trilogy ever. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. Spider-Man 1 is an absolute classic that everyone should watch. Very cheesy, but very, very enjoyable. Then number 2 happens to be my favorite of the trilogy and one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And number 3 is a very, very enjoyable movie with lots of laughs and lots of tears. Yet, yes, this is also a very beloved trilogy. This is a very nostalgic trilogy because I grew up with this trilogy. Especially the first and third one. I never actually saw the second one till I was about 10. I saw the first and the third, when I was about 7, maybe. But yes, very enjoyable trilogy with some pretty decent villains, from pretty decent acting, and just they're decent movies for how they're made, but they're really good movies that I really enjoy. So then, coming in at number 3, we have Edgar Wright's Cornetto Trilogy. If you do not know what this trilogy is, I expect all of you to know. Not expect, but I hope all of you know. The trilogy consists of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and The World's End. These are all very enjoyable movies that I enjoy all of them. And yeah, some of my favorite comedies of all time come from this trilogy. Hot Fuzz happens to be my favorite comedy of all time and my favorite of the trilogy, of course. Shaun of the Dead is a very, very enjoyable and witty written zombie movie, zombie comedy, zomcom. And then The World's End has a very enjoyable hour. The first hour is very enjoyable, then it kind of goes off and does some stupid alien stuff. But again, I enjoy this whole trilogy. And yeah, number 3, Edgar Wright's Cornetto Trilogy. And coming in at my runner-up spot, we're going to have the Godfather Trilogy. This is an amazing trilogy with amazing writing, amazing characters, and one of the best narratives in a movie ever. I cannot believe this is a story that was made and it's not a true story. It was actually made up, which I think is phenomenal and one of the best narratives ever. So then the first movie happens to be in my top 15 movies of all time. Love it, classic, amazing movie. Then the second one happens to be my favorite of the trilogy and in my top 10 movies of all time. And the third one I really, really adore, and it's still very good and one of the best movies of all time. These three movies are some of the best movies of all time. And this is one of the best trilogies of all time, and it happens to be my second favorite. So yeah, the Godfather Trilogy at number 2. Remember how I said that the Diary of a Wimpy Kid trilogy was the greatest trilogy of all time objectively? No. My number one pick for my favorite trilogy and the best trilogy of all time is, of course, the Fred Trilogy. Fred 1 consisting of a cinematic masterpiece and actually my pick for the best movie of all time. I'm kidding, of course, but the real number one, of course, is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I freaking adore this trilogy. They happen to be in my top 10 of all time, all three of them, actually, but I group them as one movie because, in my opinion, they are one movie. I watch them all the time. Last year, I watched them a total of like 26 times. I am that addicted to this trilogy, and I'll continue to watch them for another 26 times this year and even more. So yes, I watched this trilogy for the first time last year and continue to rewatch it and rewatch. And these movies are flawless in my opinion, maybe except the second one, but the first and third are definitely flawless in my opinion. Again, super enjoyable movies. I do not mind the length. I usually watch the extended edition every time, which I do not care. But yes, number one, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So those were my picks for my favorite trilogies of all time. If you enjoyed the video, I'm glad that you did. And leave in the comments below, what is your favorite trilogy of all time? I think some of us will agree, some of us will disagree, but just don't argue in the comments. You guys never do, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But yes, just thanks for watching the video and have a great day.